Hello and welcome to another episode of CIO Fireside Chat. I'm Kalpana Singhal, founder and chief editor, CXO TV, a flagship brand of Techless Media Group, and your host. We have the privilege of having Mr. Jagdish Narayan, CIO of Reliance Jio Payments Bank, with us today. Welcome, Jagdish.
Thank you very much for having me on board. Thank you.
Privilege. As all of us know that the digital payments landscape in India has witnessed tremendous growth and transformation in recent years. So, as the CIO of Reliance Jio Payments Bank, how do you see the role of your organization in shaping this ecosystem, and what unique value does it bring to customers and merchants?
So rightly said, digital transactions have exploded in the last few years due to a multiple set of events, really. One, we've had the entire sort of thrust given to it by our regulators, the government, etc., through the India stack, UPI, and things like that. And of course, the pandemic also further just accelerated the digital adoption. It almost forced digital adoption upon multiple customers who might have otherwise been sort of slightly uncertain about whether to adopt or not. They were kind of literally nudged into adopting it. So, like most other players, we're also very much trying to leverage the digital ecosystem. We are a completely digital player, so we obviously would like to do everything in a manner that eliminates any restrictions that customers would have in interacting with the bank just because of geographical distance or proximity, etc. So we want to eliminate those constraints, and that's what digital helps us do. Today, by putting your banking and financial services functionality into multiple apps, like you have your e-commerce apps, you have your social media apps, you have all different types of apps. Your financial services are typically embedded within those apps. You don't really need even to go specifically to your bank's own app itself to do certain functions. Most of them are available in your other apps itself. So those are the kind of approaches that we are adopting, and indeed many other players are in the industry are adopting, to see how the financial services can literally embed itself into the daily life of the customer wherever he or she is, rather than waiting for the customer to open the mobile phone and go into a specific app which is possibly on the fourth page of the phone and then do some transactions. So that is that's not something that customers will do very readily. We would like to be able to offer our services wherever the customer is from a digital perspective, and that's really what we're trying to do to increase adoption of digital services across the country.
Yeah, sure. So financial inclusion is a crucial goal for many organizations in the payment industry. Can you tell us more about how Reliance Jio Payments Bank is contributing to promoting financial inclusion and bridging the digital divide in India?
Sure. So this is again a very important thrust, even from the regulator itself. There are multiple things that are there. Now, from a regulatory perspective, the central bank, the Reserve Bank of India, also has mandated that all the services should be accessible, usable, and reachable to the last mile, to the last person, irrespective of any restrictions of location or even of the physical abilities, etc. Right? So there are apps that are enabled for differently abled people. There are apps enabled. There are ways and mechanisms enabled for people who have challenges with sight and sound and things like that, right? So the idea of financial inclusion is simply the fact that no form of restriction, be it a geographical spread that I am not living in an area where there are banks, or be it any other form of restriction that maybe there, should all be eliminated. So obviously our approach is also very aligned to that philosophy. We are making sure that every person has access to the financial services by way of a simple mobile app. Even the number of users of feature phone are dwindling very rapidly, there are still quite a reasonable number of feature phone users, right? Even if 20-25% of the users in India use feature phones. We are still possibly talking of a few 100 million users still, right? So that's not insignificant number. It's more than the population of most of the countries. So obviously making services available on feature phones for those customers who still do not have smartphones, even though that's a small number. So the idea is about language barriers, making sure that every service that is offered in all the local languages and dialects, so that is not a barrier. And one of the typical things I say all the time is, in financial services, the financial jargon itself is a barrier, not just the language. I mean, if you just go and tell the most sort of knowledgeable person who's not necessarily a financial person, but who's very, very highly educated in some other area, and tell him, look, you know what, you can transfer up to 2 lakhs through NEFT, that will get clear every 1 hour, but more than 2 lakhs, you can do RTGS, it'll happen instantly. So look, I just need to send 1,000 rupees to my friend, can you just tell me what do I need to do? Don't give me all these 4-letter words all the time. So just de-jargonize it, inclusion will become far better straight away. So we're trying to talk all of these measures to try and see how we can improve inclusion in these areas.
Absolutely. So apps is one thing, you're telling that, which helps in this financial inclusion.
Absolutely.
Are there any other specific initiatives or partnerships, aimed at reaching underserved segments of the population?
Absolutely. So again, the other thing is, much as things are dwindling, etc., let's face it, cash has not gone out of the market yet. There is cash there. There are still places where cash still reigns supreme. How can we try and service those segments, where the need for cash is also serviced without having the need for things like ATMs and branches? Obviously, ATMs and branches are not viable for any bank to set up. So so we have the concept of AEPS, right? I mean, where you can just use literally the finger. I mean, literally no device, not even anything else is required except the finger. Not even the phone is required, because there's no OTP even in the case of AEPS to be able to do those transactions. So there are multiple ways in which, apart from the mobile apps, AEPS being one, the other thing, very important thing, being things like bots, voice bots and chat bots, again, all in local language, which can literally chat with the customer and help do the transactions in their language. So there are multiple, basically the ability to offer services to all types of customers in the manner that is most sort of suitable to them, in the manner that they're most comfortable in availing of those services, is what we're trying to do in different ways. I'm not saying that we are there everywhere yet, but that's really the whole attempt to try and get there, so that we get maximum inclusion in this process as much as possible.
Yeah. So when you talk about cash, still a lot of people they are still using cash, especially the underserved people, I would
Absolutely.
say. So that reminds of again 2,000 rupees note that day.
Yes. Absolutely. That's a big area. That's a big area to sort of deal with, to get people gently out of the usage of cash. But that can't be just by saying that, look, I'm going to give you an app and start using it from tomorrow. I mean, that the people will get very scared. And plus the fact that everybody here today who uses apps, unfortunately, also hears of all weird things that are happening every day, of all kinds of frauds and security breaches that are happening. And that's one thing I keep saying all the time, and that's the other side of the coin. I mean, the one side of the coin is digital transactions exploding very, very fast. That's great news. But the not so great news part of that story is the fact that frauds also explode at the same speed or even faster than that. So the first thing that everybody wants to be very sure is that the transactions are secure. Mera paisa koi leke nahi jayega. That kind of, that fear, and that's not completely unjustified fear either, because things happen, knowingly or otherwise. Things happen. Are people aware of what security measures they need to take on their own phones? I mean, you can put as much security on the back end servers of the bank as much as possible, but ultimately a lot of data sits on the customer's phone, and how much is that protected is very important. So those aspects are also to be there to ensure that better awareness of cost basis.
Absolutely. So the security part of it, brings to the next question, which is all about the regulatory environment. Like the regulatory environment for payment bank is constantly evolving, and how do you navigate regulatory challenges and ensure compliance while driving innovation and delivering customer-centric solutions?
Yeah, so that's I would say that's a challenge as well as an opportunity, because the regulators have also been very sort of supportive. In fact, I would say that they are sometimes, in some cases, even driving the digital adoption. I mean, RBI has been extraordinary in its digital push. They have been pushing things faster than many players would be ready to be to adopt. So yes, there are regulatory challenges, because we need to make sure that everything that we do is completely within the boundaries of compliance. There can be no transgressions there. It has to be secure. Like the beautiful example that has come out was this concept of this guidelines from RBI called Digital Payment Security Controls (DPSC). It out in 2021 July or August, effective last year actually, effective February 22 some point, which says, like, it's assumed that, let's say you're a customer, you have a phone and you have the bank app on your phone. It's almost taken for granted. It's given that the bank app is secure. Okay, let's assume it's assumed it's secure. But what if you have some other apps on your phone that you have downloaded and installed? Okay, and that can compromise your phone data. Can the bank app detect the presence of any such potentially troublesome malware on your phone and just alert you as a customer, saying that, look, just so you know, we found these potentially problematic items on your phone. You might need to take a call. What do you want to do with them? Obviously, the bank app cannot take a call to delete something on your phone. That can't happen. But it's ultimately the customer's call. But the bank app can at least inform the customer that, look, you might be having something that can create trouble for you later.
It's a threat.
Yeah, it's a threat. So it's those, and they had made this a regulation that does bank app have the capability. The bank app must have the capability to protect the customer from such potential troublesome issues. So when we say regulations, while it was hard, it was a very painful regulation to adhere to. The kind of development, the kind of testing that you needed to put in was quite extensive. But when you look at it in hindsight, it's just an extraordinary beneficial thing for the customer at the end of the day. So yes, balancing act is always tough from if you are a pure developmental hat, because you do invest a lot of time and resources and money to get those things done. But ultimately, you just realize it's for the benefit of the customer and in the long run for the whole ecosystem as a whole. So it just balances out from that perspective.
So you're able to create that balance between regulatory.
Absolutely. Exactly.
This reminds me of, I think a couple of months back, my husband gave his phone for servicing. And after that, one of the transactions happened somewhere from, I think it was from Chennai. And, using the card basically. That transaction was not done by him, neither from our accounts department or anybody punching the card, using it on his behalf. And this happened. And, when this was reported, immediately, as our customer, we stopped the card. But we deactivated it. But nothing, we got to know, hardly we got to know that, okay, how it happened, why it happened. Simply just, we on a small transaction of, I think, 3K or 4K, means someone has tried doing it, maybe.
Right.
But this is something, we have personally experienced, which has happened.
This is a great example. I tell you, this is one of the beautiful examples. And there are two interesting pieces here. First thing is that, like the old saying goes, right? In the case of the old-fashioned bank robberies, what it says, the one silver lining in that is, hopefully the robbers are somewhere around, so there's a half chance you can go and nab them. In the case of digital thing, that it just vaporizes into thin air. You cannot catch anybody. It just disappears. Now, what you gave is a beautiful example, because it's called a velocity check, right? And this is something that banks are expected to put in place while the transaction is happening, not after it has happened. While it is happening, saying that, look, if I stay here in Mumbai and I've just done a transaction on my mobile phone from where I am right now, okay, and 10 minutes from now, there's another transaction on my same mobile number from Delhi, one of the two transactions has to be wrong, because there's no way that this phone can go from here to Delhi in 10 minutes. That's a velocity check, right? I mean, there's a minimum time that will take even if I have to fly from here to Delhi. Right? It can't be 10 minutes for sure, which means either the first transaction or the second transaction, or one of them is not right. And then it has to use more analytics data, which is where the power of AI, etc., come into play, to say, okay, I'm basically based here. All my transactions last so many days have been happening here, which means most likely the Mumbai transaction is the correct one and the second one has to be stopped. before it happens, not after it happens. Because once it happens, the loss is done. I mean, and recovering the losses, I mean, it's just God's will afterwards. I mean, it won't happen otherwise. But if you can stop the transaction before it happens, there's a good chance that you catch them. This is a basic velocity check that nowadays banks are expected to implement, and that's where tools like AI ML help you to at least get a little closer to trying and pointing out the potentially troublesome transactions like this one. So those are the stuff that we're trying to do also. I mean, I wouldn't say everybody is perfect. I mean, we're also trying to get our way to it. But yeah, these are some stuff that we need to do.
Yeah, certainly. So as you said, technology, like AI is actually an enabler now, whether it's about enhancing customer experience or maybe, protecting, security from security perspective. So like technology now plays a critical role as we are discussing. Can you share some insights on how you prioritize customer-centric innovations and leverage technology to deliver seamless and personalized experience and at the same time taking care of security?
Sure. So again, being a digital organization, everything that we do is 100% digital. So we're completely dependent on technology. Everything is technology driven. We don't have operations teams like large banks would have thousands and thousands of people sitting in IT parks punching in transactions into the system that doesn't exist. No branches, not a single branch. So the important thing in such a scenario is to give the comfort to the customer that they will get the best service and the best care without needing to visit a physical location, unlike what customers have been used to in the case of banks. And it's more psychological than anything else, because I mean, all of us order lakhs worth of stuff on Amazon, and no one knows ever where's the Amazon office or who sits there. Nobody cares. I mean, we were very comfortable ordering stuff. It keeps coming, no problem for that. But ask someone to open a bank account and put 100 rupees in that account without visiting a branch. He may never visit the branch, but at least you have the comfort in the mind that if there is a problem tomorrow, I know which road to go, which building to enter, and whom to meet. You have that comfort at the back of your mind. Okay, if there's a problem, I know where to go. If you don't have that comfort, there's no road, there's no building, there's no branch. Arey bhai, ye kaise chalega? Okay, so so to get over that, psyche itself, it's important that customers are given that the same experience through, let's say, video KYC as an onboarding mechanism. You sit where you're sitting right now. I sit where I'm sitting right now. So it's almost like you're sitting right across the table from me, and we do the discussions or the video call, and then do the onboarding, get your account open. So while you get as much of the feel as you would have if you had visited the branch, at the same time, you're not constrained by the fact that you have thousands of miles away from the branch. Okay, so some of these are the areas where technology tries to play a role in trying to make sure that the customer gets the comfort, the service, without having the limitations of geography, and most importantly, like you rightly said, secure, because there's always a guarantee that your transactions that you perform, you are in control of those transactions. You know what those transactions are. You always have the ability to there are enough checks and balances in the system to say that, look, if there's a transaction that you normally don't perform, okay, it'll immediately sort of alert you before letting the transaction go through. I mean, so these are some of these basic areas that we try to put in place, like I said, velocity checks or abnormal transactions. Okay, something when suddenly when somebody has always does transactions worth 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 rupees, and suddenly there's a 25 lakh transaction, rupee transaction on his, it could be credit, debit, whatever it is. Just alert the customer before allowing the transaction to go through, and seek a confirmation from the customer that that's indeed a valid transaction, that it's nothing wrong with it. So those kinds of comfort then makes the customer happy that there is no mischief that's going to happen to that account, and things are going to happen in a more secure manner. Those are the stuff that we try to help the customers do.
Right. So how do you evaluate the potential of technologies like blockchain, for your organization? And if you can provide example of successful technology adoption and integration that recently you have done.
Sure. So yes, being a technology organization, we have to obviously stay current with technology. So everything that comes along, we take a hard look at it, whether it's blockchain, AI, ML, chat GPT, you name it. But at the same time, it's financial services, it's the customer's money. So we have to be exceedingly careful before putting something into live operations. So you will see a lot of sort of internal assessments, testing, and development, R&D work going on all of these technologies on different use cases. But the use cases that actually are put into live operations will be done after several rounds of careful testing, etc. Because we don't want to mess around with anything that will create a problem later for customers' money or with the customer's security or anything of that sort. So, and that's typically how you'll see all financial services companies adopting technology. You'll see them all there, right there, adopting everything at the first go, but releasing them into live operations in a gradual manner, in a very careful manner, so that to make sure that there are no adverse implications of those things by just pushing something in, because we can't be doing an R&D with customers' money and then figure out something goes wrong later. So that's how we kind of take a balanced approach.
Right. So digital transformation has become a buzzword across industries. Can you share your perspective on the key elements and drivers of successful digital transformation journey, and what advice would you give to organizations, embarking on their digital transformation initiatives?
Sure. I think the key to making the digital transformations is that typically it's often said digital means put an app or put a couple of things like that and you're done. Put a portal or an app or something and you're digitized. No. Sorry, no. It's basically seeing how the service is delivered to the customer in the same way as he or she was comfortable earlier. Okay, by removing the constraints of location and other things. Remember that there are a lot of positive stuff that still existed in the old world. When you walk into a branch, you meet your friend. I mean, the banker is your friend after many days, right? You're talking to your friend. You're not talking to some alien person in a coat or a suit. Okay, you're talking to your friends. So you have a nice chat. It's a personal conversation that you have, and then you do your transactions along with that. Now, a classical app cuts all of that away. Come in, do this transfer, and go out. Bye, right? How can you make it personalized and make it less like ruthless? Okay, how can you talk to the customer? I keep saying this all the time. The key to digital transformations is to humanize digital and not to digitize humans. Remember that at the end of the day, the customer is still human. Okay, the customer is not a digital device. Okay, so try to humanize the digital service and don't try to please digitize the customer. It won't work. So that's the key to digital. How do you deliver it in the same spirit, the same manner, with the same set of, how can you talk to the customer? How can you have the same interactions that you had with the customer in the olden days without having the limitations that were there of, location and those kinds of issues? That's where you can digitize it the right way. Otherwise, you'll just put a couple of things there, tools for the heck of the tools. The tools will just not function well.
Yeah. So that was about digitization and, what actually, it depends on business to business at what definition they have for digital transformation. And along with that, understanding the need of your business and then in using technology. At the same time, there are so many options available there now after cloud, everything being, going on cloud and SaaS-based and on subscription model. So how do you decide on, whether it is selecting technology or whether it is selecting a vendor you would like to work with? So, making sure that, okay, the SLAs are in their place. If you can, throw some light on this aspect.
Sure. So again, like we said, the key is to enable customers to get services in a digital manner with the same sort of the same feelings, with the same manner that they were getting the services earlier. So when we decide about how do we implement technology, we'll obviously see what is the technology that helps us achieve these aspects most importantly. Like I took example of video KYC, right? It says, okay, I can still talk to you. You're probably hundreds of miles away from where I am, but I can still talk to you, and we can still see each other. We can have a good chat. And how transactions on this mechanism, other than you just talking to a dumb device. Even a smartphone is not, it's still a dumb device. I mean, it's not a human being. So when we select a technology platform, we would go in for one which allows us to do this kind of transactions, to do this kind of bots, this kind of mechanisms where customers where we can interact with customers, understand what customers want, etc. So when we look at vendors, we also look at vendors who understand what what we're trying to do, not just pure play tech geeks who can write a piece of code, say, okay, here's your code and do what we want to do with it. Okay, I mean, that's available in plenty. But the guys who will understand what we are trying to do, what kind of service we are trying to give to the customer, and hence what is the platform that we're trying to build in order to give that service to the customer, and someone who can help us build that and add value to that. So that who can say, look, we understand what you want and we can help you build it even better than what you think, is what really is the kind of partners that we will select. And not just a pure play coding sort of a person who knows how to write a piece of code. No, we don't want to get into those kinds of things. That's really, if you look at our selection criteria, that's really how the whole thing goes.
So please talk about your top focus areas and priorities of the next 3-5 years, and what is your technology outlook for the payment industry over the next couple of years?
So ours is really aligned. You've seen the RBI master payment directions for until 2025. Obviously, we are very aligned with that to enable mass digital inclusion adoption. That's key to it. Making sure that platforms which are currently available and which are coming up, you see a lot of stuff. Everybody talks about UPI and things like that, of course. And then there are also things like account aggregator, etc., on the lending side. All of these platforms which are completely digital, secure, and enable customers to get all the services remotely will be really our focus areas. Obviously, leveraging platforms like AI, ML, etc., to better customer service, but ensuring at the same time, in terms of security, fraud protection, and all of those aspects which make the customer more comfortable and relaxed about using those services and availing the maximum benefits from those services. That's really how our approach is going to always be.
Sure. Thank you so much, Jagdish, for answering that last question and for joining us today and sharing your insights.
So much. Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you so much.
For more updates from CXO TV, please like and subscribe to our channel.